that rule of law. There's only like 2 rules that Jesus ever told his followers to do. Love your neighbor like yourself and love God. That was it. Jesus didn't have 10 commandments. Jesus didn't have all these rules. The Gospels don't show any of that. People criticize me and they say that I don't know the Bible. I know the Bible. I have a Bible. I've read the New Testament back to back to back 1,000,000 times. My favorite chapter of the Bible was Romans. Loved it. I love Corinthians when they talk about love and patience and kindness. You shouldn't be taking the Bible as your self-help guide. Jesus never intended to be your self-help. Jesus wasn't a father. Jesus wasn't married. Jesus never even in the gospel told people how to be married. He never told people how to be parents. People have just completely bastardized the Bible and turned it into something that's not through faith. You can still have faith in God without turning everything that's in the Bible as this is what it is. One specific line in a passage doesn't mean anything if you don't have the context of the time of the people that were being spoken to, specifically in the letters to Paul. One thing that I will say that bothers me about people that take Paul's letters and apply them into today's era is that Paul was speaking to specific cities at specific times, facing specific crises. That was it. He wasn't speaking to Americans. He was speaking to the Roman Empire. He was speaking to the city of Corinthians. He was speaking to I don't even have my Bible on me. My Bible's over in there. I do have a Bible. Actually, hold on a second. I'll show you that I actually have a Bible. So you believe that I actually have a Bible. 1 second. This was my Bible when I went to church, okay? Let me just find... You will see there are highlighted passages in here. Of things that resonated with me in various passages of this Bible. So anyone that says that just because I don't have faith now that I don't know the Bible is wrong. I mean, this is something that's in the Bible that you don't hear them talk about ever. It's Romans chapter 14, verse 12. Yes, each of us give a personal account to God. So let's stop condemning each other. Decide instead to live in such a way that you will not cause another believer to stumble and fall. Stop condemning each other. Why don't they ever say that? Why is that not ever one of their verses that they tell you to read? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. What about Romans chapter 13, verse 8. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. For the commandments say you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covet. Adultery, weird how they never talk about that. These and other such commandments are summed up in the one commandment. This is the one commandment that Jesus gave his followers. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to others, so love fulfills the requirements of God's law. That's in Romans. Do you ever hear them say that? No. Because to them, they would rather use this as a weapon against other people. And it was not designed to be a weapon against anyone. And frankly, it bothers me so much, even though I'm not a Christian anymore, and even though I don't believe this anymore, if Jesus did exist, the Jesus that I have read in this Bible would be so angry at how people have turned this into a weapon to hurt each other. That's exactly what he fought against. When you read the Bible, he was fighting against all of that division and hatred. He just wanted people to love. And for those of you that are so obsessed with homosexuality being wrong, that was not added into the Bible until the 1960s. Homosexuality was not in the Bible until the 1960s. There was no mention of homosexuality at all. It was added in the 1960s because somebody was homophobic, and it's remained in the Bible ever since. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope that shows you and proves to you that I do have a Bible. But there's a reason why Romans is my favorite chapter. Was it in the 1940s? Okay, 1940s, 1960s. Either way. It was nothing, it was in modern era. It was in... (1946). Thank you. Romans is your favorite chapter too. Romans was my favorite. Yes, they added homosexuality to the Bible. We agree on so much, and I'm a Christian. You'll DM me. Okay. I leave, love one another. Exactly. That's all he wanted, was you to love. I've always honestly loved Romans. And then when I grew up Catholic, okay? And when I was going through my when I was going through confirmation, we had to have a verse that was like our verse. You know, like you had to have like your verse or whatever. And mine was Corinthians chapter 3, verse 4. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, and is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. The house. I love that verse. We still have verses of the Bible in our house, even though we're not Christians, because we still believe that the Bible has beautiful stories in it. And though it might be something that you believe to be factual, to us, we just look at it as a piece of history. And we still respect the stories. I do not appreciate that Jesus was messed up. I did not say Jesus was messed up. The Bible is not meant to be a weapon, and it's also not meant to be a self-help book. Like, that's the biggest part of this, is that prosperity gospel, which was what really Bill Gothard was. He was turning the Bible into something to solve all of our answers and be the answer for everything. But God also gives you free will. And that's always what I loved about being a Christian, was that you have the free will to choose what you want and live how you want. And God gives you things in this world to actually help you. People that are so blind and say that this is the only thing, they ignore the fact that within the Bible, it talks about free will, and it talks about how there are things of this earth that you should utilize. Like going to the doctor and using mental health and having doctors and having, like, one of my son's doctors who saved his life is a pulmonologist and a critical care doctor. And he is a skilled scientist, but also a devout Christian. And I don't agree with him on everything, but, you know, he doesn't deny science, and he doesn't deny that science helps and medicine helps, but he gives his gift of what he's learned and his ability to help from his love from God, as though God has granted him this gift to help others. So, yeah. They are elitist snobs for sure. It's weird because when I grew up Catholic, like, my family was Democrats, and I don't care if you're a conservative or a Democrat. But, you know, like, I didn't grow up thinking that you should hate someone based on the color of their skin or their sexuality or if they had a mental illness. The Catholic churches in our area were super into charity and had so many services, from homeless shelters to domestic violence shelters to helping children at hospitals and families in need. And it was never, ever this thought that you shouldn't need, like, you should be ashamed if you needed help. There was always this aspect of, like, everyone's going to go through some period in their life where they might need help, and there's no shame in asking for help. And so these cults that make you feel ashamed for needing social services and want you to deny those rights, they're not just taking those away from adults, they're taking them away from children. And children have a right to eat. Just because their parents can't afford it doesn't mean you deny the right of a child to eat. Yeah, the Duggars aren't, like, into vaccines. They're not really into... The Duggars are, like, into medicine as long as it benefits them. I don't agree. Bill Gothard, when he designed his rules, was someone that was was anti-hippies. He hated that the culture was changing, and he hated that liberalism was taking over society. So the IBLP fundamentally was designed not only as a biblical school, but also anti-liberal agenda, social progression. He did not want anyone to have rights that infringed upon white American men. He hated it. You don't have to spend more than a few minutes in the ATI's curriculum wisdom books to see how racist this curriculum is, how sexist it is, how homophobic it is. No, I don't think that Catholic churches are the answer. I left the Catholic Church for a reason. I was simply just saying I grew up in a church that believed in good works, like, and helping other people. I am not by any means saying that I agree with what has happened with the cover-ups and the abuse of children in the church at all. I think it goes without saying that I've stood up against that in the past. And if you're new here and have missed that, I'm sorry. But I did leave the Catholic Church for a reason. And it had to do with how they treated women and how they actually dealt with the children being sexually abused. The IBLP doesn't specifically have a religion that it's like, or a faith denomination that it's attached to. For most people that are in it, they're part of the Baptist world. But people that are IBLP also go to like non-denominational churches or evangelical mega churches. I mean, really, they're everywhere and nowhere at all. The numbers of the IBLP are dwindling. The problem with the IBLP is that even though people have walked away from Gothardism, it has weaved into every aspect of their lives because the control is so indoctrinated into them that it's like the way one survivor described it to me, it's like pepper in cottage cheese. So you know the pepper is in the cottage cheese, but you have to pick out each specific piece of pepper. And so it's in all aspects of your life, but you don't know how to get it out. And you have to learn a new way of thinking because the way that Bill teaches the world is false. Okay, so this is what I want to say about the Platts and all these other people. Gothardism has, like I said, the pepper in the cottage cheese. Most Baptist pastors have gone through, especially the ones that are a little bit older, went through seminars by Bill Gothard. A lot of them have Gothard's books, have taken from Gothard's teachings, and a lot of millions of Baptists have gone through Gothard's seminars. It's hard to differentiate the non-IBLP from parts of the IFB because they have adopted so many of the Gothard-isms, which is why people who are not in the IBLP actually have some of the same beliefs. So, and they like overlapped because the IBLP is like super expensive. You have to pay for seminars, you have to pay for the programs. So not everyone could afford it. So some people, instead of going through the IBLP, they just had it at their church or whatever. And Michael and Debbie Pearl, which is who basically started the corporal punishment side of things, wrote their book. And then that started going through all of the Baptist churches and like the Southern churches. And then it became sort of like Bill Gothard didn't really speak to child abuse or corporal punishment very much. He kept things very like high level so that he couldn't be accused of like promoting child abuse. So that's where Michael Pearl sort of came in and filled in that blank. And so he would be at all of these seminars selling these books on it. And then they would have speakers come in that were not Bill Gothard that would talk about corporal punishment. So they just kind of start intertwining and interweaving, and the Gothardisms just sort of spill out into the other churches. So they just become a part of some of these Baptist sects because even if they're not Gothard, they still have Gothardisms. So the IBLP is most commonly found in Southern Baptists, Independent Fundamentalist Baptist. Yes, Lauren Swanson's family is in the IBLP. I actually took some photographs. I'll show you. Hold on. So you guys have asked, like, is Abby from the IBLP? Yes. So Abby Burnett and her sisters, they were in the IBLP. They grew up in the IBLP, and despite what you guys want to believe about John and Abby, they are still in the cult. Abby does not work outside of the home, even though she was a nurse before they got married. She has not worked since they got married. And then here's Joy and Carlin. This is from a photograph from the IBLP. This is the IBLP celebrating Aaron and Gregory Payne, or Chad Payne's wedding. I have a hard feeling that Aaron was one of Gil Bates's, or Bill Gothard's victims. That's just my belief. He's like fixated on Aaron. Here is Chad Payne next to Bill Gothard, and then you see David Wallard on the end. David Waller, who is Priscilla Waller's husband and Anna Duggar's brother-in-law, he was the assistant for Bill Gothard for years, and he today is a devoted Gothard. So he ascribes to all of Gothard's beliefs. He is equally as dangerous as any of these other pastors are. Here is Laura DeMace on the stage of a IBLP event, so she is a part of the cult as well. Here's Josh Duggar giving a speech at the IBLP in 2015. This is Bill Gothard, and if you look closely, I don't think you can see, Jana is on the stage. She is the third person on the right, from inside in the right, and then Ginger is back in the back. Bill Gothard is at the front. Bill Gothard, again, someone that has been accused by multiple women of sexual harassment and sexual assault. This is a photograph of the Duggar girls speaking at an IBLP event. This is Michelle Duggar presenting at an IBLP event. That's Jill Rodriguez with Bill Gothard. So a lot of you guys have asked if Jill is IBLP. She's not, but they believe a lot of the same things as the IBLP. Well, it was on my right when I was looking at the screen. I don't know if it's on the left for you when you're looking at it. For me, it was on my right. This was back like last year, and it has they went to 60 prisons or something. It was part of their prison ministry, and in the photo is Jed Duggar, Jeremiah Duggar, Katie Nakatsu, now Katie Duggar. There's multiple like Duggars or Duggar friends in this photo, and this is actually from last year. This is the information from the lawsuit that says that they released They showed an utter indifference to the conscious disregard for a substantial risk of harms to the plaintiffs for her sexual abuse, and they knowingly shared the sham investigation, knowing that this public disclosure of false information would result in severe emotional distress for the Mrs. Wilkinson. So they put out a false narrative about what happened to her, which then created like her getting a lot of hate, trauma, tons of abuse from within the cult. So here it's basically explaining like how you can see Gil Bates' names are listed in there. Same with the Stephen Payne. Timothy Lewandowski is now the president of the IBLP, so he's like the new Bill Gothard, and he hasn't changed anything at all in terms of what they teach. This person is obviously a fundamentalist that hates that I'm speaking out against the IBLP. They really don't like it when you talk about them. Let's see. This is the natures of the actions, which include reckless negligence, based on intentional, reckless, negligent, and willful wanton acts, and admissions of the defendants with regard to sexual abuse and sexual harassment and similar allegations of maleficence suffered by the plaintiffs. So that was sort of they were seeking damages for what they had done, for covering up what happened to them. Here you see Gil Bates literally listed as one of the co-defendants as a part of the cover-up. These were like the main points. This actually comes from Recovering Grace's website. And again, I want to thank the admins, and I have had now several of the people that were a part of this lawsuit reach out to me and just thank me for continuing to bring this up, because while for some people they feel like this chapter of their lives is over for the IBLP, the victims, they're enduring continued trauma from what happened to them while they were in the IBLP, and still to this day dealing with trauma, PTSD, loss of identity, being shunned from their families, just their entire lives were flipped upside down, and they're still dealing with that harm that was inflicted on them by the IBLP. So failing to conduct reasonable investigations into credible allegations of sexual abuse, failing to report known allegations of sexual abuse and sexual harassment committed against adult and minor IBL participants, failing to train or supervise their staff and management. So these are sort of like the big takeaways. This is in one of the allegations where one of the girls actually says that she was being sexually abused by her father and her younger sisters, and Gothard took pleasure in learning the details and kept pressing the young woman for more explicit details of the abuse that took place. She alleges he raped her in a private suite in the IBLP when she was 17 or 18 years old. That's from the Washington Post, which was like one of the outlets that broke the story. There's one thing in here I was trying to find, and it was related to. This is where it says, the members of the IBLP board were not selected for their independence of willingness to provide the oversight necessary for a multi-million-dollar organization. Rather, the current board members were selected for their loyalty to the ministry and Gil Gothard's teachings. So this is like talking specifically to Gil Bates and the other board members. As a result of the internal investigation commissioned and paid for by the defendant, IBLP, by its management and its board of directors, they concluded without independent inquiry and investigation into claims of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and inappropriate touching occurring in minors, adults, that no criminal or reportable conduct had occurred, and further announced on November 17th, 2014. Chad and Aaron they have not directly said they're against the IBLP. They say they're not affiliated with the ministry, but they're still very, 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 they hold on to a lot of the beliefs of the IBLP. Just because they don't affiliate with it anymore doesn't mean that they don't use the characters or whatever, the teachings. This one is Gothard attributed his teaching about adopted children to demonic fears. He taught that if adopted children were not, they should at least be ordered to earn their keep in the family home. He actually told families to get rid of their adopted children at one point in time, to send them away, put them in foster care, get rid of them, which led to extreme abuse by adopted children. This one says that she experienced physical, emotional, and sexual abuse when she was home with her siblings. She was raped by her father, that she had been sexually abused and human trafficked to IBLP staff, including Jenny. She had reported this to the IBLP staff, including Jenny Steed, who's passed away, spending months away from her family, attending conferences in various states, telling people about the abuse. Nothing was done. So like this.
They took their own life. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's happened. They should have gone to the Son. So there's a lot of things against me. But Lord, you're my shield. I can glory in you. And you're the lifter up of mine head. Do you ever have your children?
That's Gil Bates at the IBLP in 2021 telling people that if they kill themselves or if someone commits suicide or dies by suicide, that it's their fault that they didn't go to the gospel and they didn't go to Psalms. It's their fault. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. So they blame people who die by suicide. And then having an adopted sibling that's of color does not make someone not racist. I would ask you to speak with people who have been adopted that are people of color on what their experience is like when they're adopted into a white family and whether or not there's racism that exists for them. Because overwhelmingly, those that I've spoken to say that there are racists within the familial relationships. Having a family member of color does not mean that you are not a racist. That's just factual. Kelly believes just like you. Kelly believes just like you. So it's really ridiculous. It's really offensive, actually. Say isn't one of the Bates engaged to one of those Asian girls or whatever, like however you want to frame it. Um, Lassen being in a relationship with a girl who is, I believe, Korean or Chinese. Again, does not discount the fact that the family is racist. Tiffany was raised in California by a white evangelical family. So to them, they will accept her because she was raised by white people. Tiffany is adopted. Since your video aired, there is the comments. Hello. I intended to do this live last night, and then Kelly believes die by suicide.